What is going on, my true crime family? This is another edition of You Can't Make This BS Up. Before I get in today's story, I want to give a big shout out to everyone that downloaded my latest episode off of Spotify. Man, it was crazy. I don't know what happened over the weekend. I don't know who's been telling about what I'm doing. I'm going to say I appreciate all of you. God bless you. But we got 427 downloads from the Christy Evans and Khalid Square episode, which is the biggest I've ever gotten. 849 from the Beatrice Scamper and John Murray episode. 143 Danielle Parker part 2 episode. For supporting the channel. Like I said, I'm still small, I'm still growing. You can catch my other content stories I'm putting up daily on Patreon. All you got to do is go to www.patreon.com/you can't make this BS up. All together, it will show you all the stuff I have to offer. I will be putting news clippings of other major stories that we don't get to that has happened recently, major cases that are very extreme, could be very sensitive to most people. Also, I got a subscription for Apple. All you got to do is go under You Can't Make This BS Up, look at the episodes, and you can subscribe to it. Okay? Like I said, support the channel because that's all you are doing is supporting so we can continue to grow. So we are still working on season 2. This is possibly episode 6 for the season. I had to make sure I had everything right in my head because these seasons will run together in a minute. This right here is a very complex story. This story actually runs into 3 different places. The love story begins in Fort Stewart, then it expands on into Korea and South Korea, and then it has a tragedy twist in Detroit or near Detroit, the suburb of Detroit. I'm not going to go into too much detail. If you have already heard this story, I know a lot of true crime enthusiasts have talked about this story. I decided to do the story because I'm a veteran. It was Veterans Day yesterday. I worked on it most of the day, and I was determined to get it out for you guys because the story is just tragic, and it just goes to show you that you can never trust anyone. You can never trust. So, enough of all that. We are going to jump into, like I said, this is the Kemia Hassel and Jeremy case. Again, this is Kemia Hassel and Jeremy Cuellar case. On December 31st, just an hour and a half before the new year, a woman called 911 reporting that her husband had been assaulted right on their home's driveway. Afterwards, she was very distraught on the phone with her father-in-law to inform him that his son had been critically injured. The Hassels family New Year of 2018 was starting with the news of the passing of their cherished loved one who succumbed to their wound, and he suffered from an attack in the privacy of the driveway of his home, his parents' home that he was visiting. In this case, There is going to be a lot of twists and turns of betrayal. There is going to be a lot of lying. And there's definitely going to show you that there is no honor when it comes to greed and when it comes to love. Again, this is why we do this, right? This is why I report on these stories. So let's go and jump into the characters involved. Kamiah Martin was born on January the 3rd of 1997 in Miami, Florida. A year later, her family decided to relocate to Atlanta, Georgia, where she spent her childhood. Now, Kamiah grew up to be very outgoing, an energetic young woman, athletic. She participated in track and field. She also was a cheerleader. People really liked her. Guys instantly was attracted to her. She had a charisma where she also drawn people in to her surroundings, and friends just doted on her because of her personality and her way of being so enthusiastic when it comes to dealing with it. Now, her senior year in high school, she was trying to contemplate whether to attend university or find a job. But Kamiah chose to enlist in the military, which offered numerous benefits, including free health care, complimentary education, and the opportunity to travel the world, along with financial stability. Now, after completing her studies, Kamiah joined the Army in 2015. While stationed with a combat unit in Colorado, she met a young man named Tyrone Hassel III. He worked as a mechanical engineer and was serving in the armed forces. From the very first moment of their interaction, they realized they had a lot in common. See, they were both born into large families. They shared a passion for sports and was very attracted to each other. They exchanged a phone number. This marked the beginning of a romance. So Maya and Tyrone not only spoke on the phone regularly, but they also spent a great deal of time together, and they quickly became inseparable. Now, we're going to talk about a little bit before I get involved about Tyrone's background. Tyrone Hassel was born on December the 31st, 2018 in Benton Harbor, Michigan, a suburb which is right along in Detroit. Now, y'all know what we do. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. I'm going ahead of myself. I am so sorry. Sergeant Tyrone Hassel, my apologies, guys. The third was born to Tyrone Hassel Jr. and LaShonda Jones on August the 23rd, 1995 in Benton Harbor, Michigan. Now, they said that Sergeant Tyrone Hassel was a very dedicated young man. He received his formative education at Benton Harbor Area School. He graduated in honors in 2013, 2 years before this young lady did, and he was a member of the Tigers Marching Band, Junior ROTC in the Kappa League. Now, he continued his education at Grand Valley State University in Allendale, Michigan, where he studied mechanical engineering. But in 2015, not the same time she also joined, Tyrone enlisted in the United States Army, where he received multiple honors. Now, he was awarded the Army Achievement Medal, the German Army Proficiency Badge, and completed a 9-month rotation in South Korea. So he was Tyrone was a superstar from the start. He actually told his father that he was going to go into the military, and his dad was kind of put back because at the time his son was rocking dreadlocks, like any high schooler rocking dreadlocks, got the hip hop vibe going. They're like, you got to cut your hair and be straight laced. He was like, well, doesn't matter to me. I want to be disciplined and I want to make a difference. And that's what he did it for. So that lets you know that Tyrone Hassel had a thriving conservative spirit to do the right thing from the beginning. But let's get back to the romance of these two lovely lovebirds. So, like I said, there were when romance naturally evolved into a serious relationship because sometime during that process, Kamiah discovered she was pregnant. Now, Tyrone was over the moon, especially when he was learning he was having a boy. He knew that this boy was going to carry on the name of the Tyrone Hassel and was going to be Tyrone Hassel the fourth. And then he decided to ask Kamiah's hand in marriage. Now, Tyrone's father, noticing that these two young people, both in the military, study income, but seeing them becoming involved together so rapidly, he asked his son, like, hey, man, did you carefully think this through? This is, I know you got her pregnant. You don't have to marry her. There is other options. But Tyrone was determined and confident and assured his father that, Daddy, this is what I want to do. I got this woman pregnant. I love this woman. I want her and me to start a family. So that's what they did. So the newlyweds decided to get married, and they settled into Tyrone's father's house, and began preparing for the arrival of their firstborn. They lovingly set up the baby's nursery and discussed plans for the future. All right, this is a good time for both of these young people. Okay, they are both in the military. They're both making good money. They are both taking care of their responsibilities and duties to prepare for this. But like anything else, when you're dealing with a job like the military that is so complex, one of the drawbacks of military service is the relocation. And the newly married couple received orders to transfer out of the state of Georgia. They learned that they had to make the most of their situation. And although Kamiah was disappointed with the move, there was a positive aspect of this. She would now be closer to her family because now she's going to be in South Georgia, which is Hinesville, Georgia, which is where they located the Fort Stewart in Hinesville, Georgia, which is literally about 4 hours away from Atlanta, Georgia. And, the birth of her first child, that came around in 2017, made the husband, which is Mr. Tyrone Hassel, Sergeant Tyrone Hassel, to focus all his efforts on raising this baby and fully accept the situation. It was a healthy, strong baby boy who he also named Tyrone Hassel the Fourth, or they gave him a nickname, Chunk, based upon how chunky he was as a baby. Now, the daily care of their son took up almost all of their free time. When you're dealing with an infant, you don't have no time. You're always busy. The marriage and the birth of the child happened so quickly that the newlyweds didn't even have time to fully enjoy each other's company. Additionally, a month later, Tyrone informed Kamiah that he had invited his teenage brother to live with them for a while. Now, his reason was the neighborhood where the family lived could not be called safe. Now, Tyrone was worried that his younger brother would get involved with the wrong crowd and run into trouble. Staying with them in Georgia would help the teenager avoid the dangerous environment and benefit him as an older brother. He felt like he was responsible. This is the great thing he needed to do. Kamiah was not feeling this idea at all. In her mind, it was an invasion of privacy. Like, we just got married, we got a baby, we're going back and forth in the military. We barely have time to get ourselves together. Now you want to bring in an underage, another minor in here? Like, no, I'm not feeling this. And you didn't talk to me about it. But Tyrone, had already made the decision, and it is what it was. It is what it is. So, but anyway, his brother moved in, and the young wife had to adapt to this presence of his young brother being at the home. Now, Tyrone is still young. He's 22, but he felt great. I mean, in his short military career, he had already been promoted to the rank of sergeant, and that actually happened on October the 31st, 2017. So you got to remember, you're in the Army and to get promoted sergeant and only being in for 2 years, you really have shown you are a superstar. That is what they call a fast track rank. Most people don't even, in 2 years, uh, the average soldier or even in the Marine is going to get corporal. But to get sergeant, you are very squared away. You are very focused on the job. You are very, very good at what you do. And that definitely was a good pay jump too, from E4 to E5. And think about that. That's a huge jump. So basically everything's going well, right? You would think that this would be happily ever after, but on this show here, when we say you can't make this BS up, and I know that's not how it ends. There is some trauma about to happen. So buckle up. Here we go. So overall, things like I said was going well, but as soon as the couple got used to the new living conditions, things started changing again. Immediately after their son's first birthday, Kamiah and Tyrone received orders to go to South Korea for military service. So now the teenage brother has to go to mission. Little Chunk was left in the care of his grandparents on I want to say on her mother's side, while Kamiah and Tyrone headed to South Korea for a military operation. Now, despite being married, the young couple served in different locations and lived in separate barracks. Now, this is common in the military. A lot of times when you're doing missions, especially if it's combat related or whatever mission it is, if they feel like that your wife being with you in the same unit or even on the same platoon could cause you not to focus, or company not to focus, they're going to move you around. They're going to move one of y'all on one side of the base and one side of the other doing something. It's just what happened. And then you got to remember they probably is going to have them living in separate barracks because they try to keep everybody in the same barracks that they are with their company. So you're talking about South Korea, which is probably a pretty large base. They probably didn't get to see each other that much. They probably maybe got to see each other maybe twice or three times out the week. You know what I mean? Because this is you're doing missions. It's just how the military works. There's a lot of times that you could be in the same place with your wife and y'all do not even be stationed in the same company. It's very rare. So again, this is nothing unusual. So, but in reality, they didn't make much effort to spend a lot of time. They didn't make much effort to spend a lot of time together because of their job. However, there, Kamiah saw regularly another soldier, and this is Jeremy Cuellar from Chicago, Illinois. See, the two had met early before they ended up in South Korea, but they weren't particularly close friends. Now, serving side by side, they began to develop an affinity with each other and for each other. Now, Jeremy was a couple of years older than Kamiah, and he was also married. But when he received his deployment to South Korea, he was already in the process of getting divorced. The two fellow soldiers bonded over frequently discussing their personal lives, expressing their grievances and frustrations about their partners. Kamiah was unhappy in her marriage and claimed that Tyrone didn't give her enough attention. She asserted that her workaholic husband spent more time on the military base than at home with her and their son. Now, let's stop right there on that and tell you why that is. He is a sergeant now. He's an E5. Sergeant plays a lot of roles in the Army and also in the Marine Corps as well, and all the other branches that has that rank, even in the Air Force. The sergeant is equivalent to me being in the Navy as a E6 or E7. Those are the two ranks in the military that definitely spend a lot of time on base. You may get an E5 that really has a leadership role, that to the extent they have to stay on the base for a long period of time, but most of the time E6s and E7s have as much power as the E5s in the military, starting out with the workload. So yeah, that definitely would answer a lot of those questions. And their communication continued after work on Snapchat. And eventually this correspondence began to take on an increased and playful tone and smoothly involving the flirting, which later shifted into real life. Kamiah was a driver and gave Jeremy rides for personal errands, and he in turn filled her car with gas, invited her to dinner as a gesture of gratitude. Now, this young woman was struck by the attention she received from Jeremy and started comparing him to her husband. The advantage clearly did not favor Tyrone, who was always busy with his service and what he had going on in the base. Compared to her spouse, that new boyfriend that she has now started to have an affair with appeared much more romantic and interested in spending time together and always want to communicate with her. Now, the relationship between Jeremy and Kamiah developed very rapidly. Friendly trips to the gym and joint hangouts and visit to bars after work turned into a full-fledged affair. Jeremy not only showered his new girlfriend with exquisite compliments, but also brought her small gifts. He said that she deserved much more than what she was getting from her husband, Tyrone. Now, I want you to understand that right now, both of these are really playing with fire. They are both married, they're both in the military, but she's married, even though he's divorced, but she's in the military, her husband's in the military, the boyfriend's in the military. They could get an article code of justice right here, right now, for doing what they're doing. Because in the military, it is prohibited for a military personnel to have an affair with any married person, especially a married department, another married DOD person, or a person that is in the military. That is just a no. You can go to mass, as they say in the Navy, or you can go and get an article on, I think they call it Article 15, yeah, in the other branches. So no, that is a no-no. So as the two grow closer to each other, they could no longer hide their affair from their fellow soldiers. Their irresistible attraction became evident not only to their colleagues, but also to people who saw them in bars and at the gym. Those around them began to whisper, knowing that Kamiah was married to Sergeant Tyrone and that Jeremy had a wife at home. Some even tried to pull Kamiah to the side and warn her that her secret affair was noticeable to everyone around. However, the love-struck Kamiah was hardly concerned about the fact that this information could sooner or later reach her husband. And that's exactly what happened. Ignoring warnings, she continued to flirt with her lover during training at the gym and was spotted by a close friend, Tyrone. Uh-oh. Nothing like getting caught by your homie's friend. Your husband's friend. Because they have no skin in the game. So they're not going to keep quiet. They're going to tell. See how this plays out. The man immediately understood the nature of the relationship between the two fellow soldiers and promptly told Tyrone everything. The couple had a serious conversation where the woman categorically denied having an affair with Jeremy and promised to cease all communication with him. In reality, Kamiah did nothing of the sort. So basically, what probably happened was the sergeant found out, he confronted his wife. He probably was going to really go to this dude and handle this guy mano a mano, or either that report to his people what's going on. But he know if he did that, that could put his family in trouble and her in trouble. So he just basically probably gave her an ultimatum. You either do this or, I'm blowing it all up. I'm telling everybody. And she probably said, okay, I commit, I stop all communication. I don't want y'all to think that. Anyway, she continued to meet and communicate with Jeremy until one day, when they were together, her husband noticed that his wife was texting her lover on Snapchat. At that moment, a loud argument erupted. The man expressed all his grievances towards his wife, to which she solemnly promised never to talk or flirt with Jeremy again. So, this was already going on even after or during the time they were together in Korea. She was still keeping this up. One thing I can tell you about a relationship, red flag. If you don't told a person to leave that person alone or stop doing that sort of thing, and they continue to do it blankly with no regard, she's already checked out of the relationship. See, like to me, Kamiah really felt like that Jeremy was that forbidden fruit, was that guy that could get things done. And she just felt like that, hey, this is who she need to be with. Although, in fact, she simply warned Jeremy that they should be more careful not to arouse suspicion from her husband. By that point, they both completely disregarded Tyrone's feelings and continued their full-fledged relationship. Jeremy finalized his divorce and told Kamiah that he was ready to take her husband's place and become a father to a son chump. Buddy, you're really trying to get, no, you can't do that. Not nobody, no man's son is already there. You doing too much. He also made it clear that he was prepared to get rid of Tyrone one way or another. It was now up to her to file for divorce. Around that same time, the couple was in the process of updating their life insurance policy. Kamiah and Tyrone were each other's beneficiaries and insured for $400,000. Now let's talk about it. So in the military, everybody, as I know of right now, get a $400,000 insurance policy. If you're in the military, when you first sign the paper and get through boot camp, you are insured. You are insured. There's no ifs and buts about it. So they are going to make sure that during that time that you understand what to sign up for and everything else. Now, here's the thing about the $400,000 in insurance policy is that even after you get out of the military, a lot of people don't know this, but you can also use it to follow you in your civilian life as well. So, there's more than one way. More than one way. So, let's continue. They would not be entitled to this money if they separate. in a conversation with her lover, the woman inquired about what Jeremy would do if he had 400,000 right now. They spent the whole day fantasizing about how they would spend the money until Kamiah directly asked if Jeremy was ready to send Tyrone to the other side so they could have the opportunity to make their fantasies a reality. Now, see, that's another thing y'all got to understand is that's crazy about this story. Anytime people start asking you that, you should not do that. That should be a no. That should be a definite no. That should be a definite no. Because it just ain't worth it. I'm sorry. I'm just being 100. It ain't worth it, man. I don't know. If I'm ready to check out a relationship, I'm leaving. But doing that, no. That is insanity. But let's continue to see what they say. The friend, of course, did not believe that Jeremy was serious because his words about killing his mistress' husband sounded too crazy. Let me rephrase that. So anyway, when she asked him would he ready to do this fantasy for reality, the love-struck Jeremy confessed that he was ready to do anything for her because he loved her that much. That's why the conversation further flowed into planning an actual crime. Now, Jeremy was unable to contain his overflowing emotions shared this plan with his friend. He enthusiastically talked about how the 400K would provide him, Kamiah, and Little Chunk with a great start of their future life together. Now, this right here is so crazy. Again, you're planning to take out another human being for another human being when they could just divorce each other. And another thing too, this guy that this little boy that you trying to make your son is not it, buddy. I mean, it's just not. That is not your kid. I mean, his dad is in his life. Okay, are you that weak of a guy that you cannot allow the dad to be in the life? You gotta have it all to yourself. Like, this is crazy. It really is. The friend, of course, did not believe that Jeremy was serious because his words about killing his mistress' husband sounded too crazy. Unfortunately, the unfaithful spouses had no doubts about their own righteousness and the luck that accompanied it. Over the next few months, Kamiah constantly complained to Jeremy about Tyrone, saying that she was very unhappy with his behavior, that her husband was just driving her crazy, and that she couldn't wait to find herself in the strong arms of her love of the woman of the man she loved, Jerry. All of these complaints really pushed this man over the edge to save Kamiah from the terrible relationship and find a way out of the toxic situation that she has painted in his mind. In addition to everything, the woman sent Jeremy photos, oh Lord, of Little Chunk and wrote that she could already imagine the boy calling Jeremy dad. Maya described how they would live as one happy family and raise her son together. Guys, let me tell you something. That right there, and I'm not a psychologist, please, I'm not a psychologist, but this is just from experience. This is how sociopaths get people to manipulate into doing something for them. She already had peep game and know that he really was attached to her son. Knowing that he had a love for her son already, and he wants to be that guy to step up to be a father, she used that as her go-to to push him to do this deed faster. Because in her mind, he was not, she had to do everything to get him and keep him at the edge, keep him there ready to jump off that ledge. Having conceived of getting rid of her annoying husband, The woman deliberately betrayed the whole the whole difficult situation and messages to her lover, which allegedly caused her great emotional pain. Now, Jeremy, being so naive, he believed Kamala's every word and constantly assured her that it was a matter of time. Soon everything would be over and her life would change for the better. He promised to take care of it. And for now, he asked her to pull her stuff together and endure a little until the right moment came to implement their plans. As the Christmas and New Year holidays were approaching, Kamiah and Jeremy decided that it would be perfect time to eliminate Tyrone. Now, the Hassels intend to spend Thanksgiving in Georgia with Kamiah's family and then go to Michigan and spend Christmas with Tyrone's family. Meanwhile, Jeremy was supposed to go home to Chicago to spend his vacation with his mother. And since the lovers would be close to each other, Jeremy would be able to get to Michigan to carry out their sinister plan. So I want y'all to know that Chicago and Detroit are pretty close to each other. It's not that far. In fact, I'm going to Google it right quick on my phone. Let's do a Google. So the Chrome right quick. And we're going to go to, so it's literally an hour and 30-minute drive. You can take trains, you can take buses. It don't take long to get there. So Chicago to Benton Harbor is a skip and a hop. All you got to do is take, I want to say, it looks like I-94, and it'll lead you right where you need to go. Right into it. So he was I-94 bound. I-94. All right, y'all, let's continue with this. So everything was supposed to look as if Tyrone had become a victim of street violence. He simply found himself in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wouldn't raise suspicion. Considering the neighborhood where the Hassels lived, the city was known for its high crime rate. In October 2018, the 9-month stay in South Korea ended. All three returned to the United States to leave. Tyrone and Kamiah were reunited with their beautiful boy. The woman pretended that everything was fine while secretly counting down the days until her husband's demise. Jeremy was also counting down the days until he could embrace his beloved, the woman of his dreams, without fear of incurring her husband's wrath. He had already purchased a couple of guns from a fellow soldier. He and Kamiah communicated only through Snapchat, where the mistress continued to send photos and videos of Chunk, calling him Jeremy's son. December 17, 2018 arrived. The Hassels went to Michigan, where they planned to stay for the 10 days at Tyrone's father's house. Now, as soon as they arrived there, Kamiah learned that nothing has changed. Another of her husband's relatives, this time his younger sister, was going to move into their home in Georgia. The girl planned to go with them, and that when their vacation ended, Kamiah was furious. Although Tyrone's fate was already sealed, the fact that he had once again made a decision without her threw the woman off balance. She immediately contacted Jeremy, very upset, expressed her grievances against her husband, and continued to further justify her decision to get rid of Tyrone. Kamiah claimed that this was a display of extreme disrespect towards her and a lack of concern for their child's well-being. Jeremy was once again convinced that his beloved was suffering and promised her that he would soon rid of all her problems. However, the 10-day trip to Tyrone's father's house was coming to an end, and Jeremy still hasn't shown up to fulfill that promise. Kamiah began to panic, so she decided to increase the pressure on her lover, demanding him to immediately execute their plan. To buy more time, she suggested to her husband that they stay with his family for a few more days. maybe even celebrate New Year's with them. Since the grandparents saw so little of Chunk, it would be fun for them to celebrate the holidays together. But in reality, Kamiah was just trying to get her lover more time to get to Michigan and carry out those plans. The unsuspecting Tyrone gladly agreed. He didn't need to be persuaded to stay with his parents a little longer. So during this time, he met up with friends. He had fun. He was helping the family prepare for the new year. Jeremy also promised Kamiah that he would execute that plan within 7 days. So on December 28th, he went to a supermarket to buy a GPS navigator for the dashboard. Then he sent a message to his mistress on Snapchat, reassuring her that he was already on his way. After that, he turned off his phone before leaving Chicago to avoid tracking his location. But instead of buying another mobile phone with an unknown number for cover, he turned his phone back on to ask Kamiah for me. He needed to see her before committing the crime for her sake. However, Kamiah was not hearing that. She was arguing that there was no time for romance. She needed him to focus on the mission. She pointed out several locations to Jeremy where her husband would be over the next 4 days, hoping that her lover would be able to choose a suitable place for the murder on the first evening when Tyrone was out with his friends at a nightclub. Jeremy followed him. Now he watched his rival exit the establishment and sit across the street from the nearest gas station, observing Tyrone fill up his car. But Jeremy lost his nerve and couldn't pull the trigger. That night, about 2 days later, Jeremy mustered up the courage to take a person's life. Kamiah gave him the address Tyrone's father. The perpetrator positioned himself in the car on the opposite side of the street, waiting for the right moment. He saw Tyrone leave the home, but he wasn't alone. His teenage brother was walking with him. Jeremy hesitated. He contacted Kamiah and explained that he couldn't shoot now because Tyrone's younger brother was with him. So what his accomplice ordered him to do is straight grimy. She ordered him to shoot both of them. The teenager had annoyed her when he lived with them in the house. Man, you gotta be cold-blooded to order to kill your brother-in-law because he aggravated you when he was living in the house with you. Bruh, I don't want no enemy. This just wow. However, for the first time, Jeremy stood firm and said the following: I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to shoot that young man. Sorry, can't do it. So then there was one more attempt, and that failed again because Tyrone was walking too fast. Jeremy was either maybe he didn't see where he was going, or maybe he got confused, or maybe again he lost his nerve. And then there was a total of 6 attempts. I mean, 6 attempts on this man's life. Now you would think that having 6 unsuccessful attempts, this should be a little voice in your head telling you, you need to stop now, buddy. This ain't the move. I know I would have, but I guess when you're determined to prove your love, boy, you are definitely determined. So Kamiah was angry, and she was already beside herself. She wrote to her lover on Snapchat, genuinely outraged. The vacation time was relentlessly running out. Her husband was alive and well, and after each fruitless attempt, Jeremy would drive back to Chicago to try again the next day to carry out the plan. After a harsh conversation with Kamiah, he once more promised her at that time he would definitely keep his word. Now, guys, I hope he had a good gas car, cause buddy, you driving an hour and damn near almost 2 hours to do this every day. Hey, it's 4 hours round trip. That's crazy. The last day of the year arrived. The Hassels had planned to have a picnic in a meadow, a 5-minute walk from the house. They wanted to celebrate New Year's Eve outdoors with friends. The day before, Kamiah pretended to be sick. She told her husband that she wasn't feeling unwell and would prefer to just stay at his father's house. But we know she wasn't sick. We already know what she on. Kamiah's on that demon time. But let's continue. The wife told Tyrone that she would also leave their son at home so the adults could relax and enjoy themselves without having to watch over a small child. When everyone had left, Kamiah called her lover and gave him one chance to give her freedom. Jeremy tried once again to set up a date before going through with the deed, but she rejected once more. Jeremy, that was your red flag right there. She don't even want to see you until you do the deed. So that should tell you something. What? You want? Okay, I'm out. No, I'm out. Kamiah claimed that she was babysitting and couldn't meet up. That day, Tyrone set himself up around 10. He called his wife and told her that he would stop by the house for a minute to bring her some treats. The woman realized that this was the perfect time for the crime. She hastily texted Jeremy, inviting him to take a convenient position somewhere near the house. She prepared to wait, restless with excitement. After all, if her lover lost his nerve now, she and her husband would return home to Georgia and she had to continue playing the role of an exemplary wife. Determined, Jeremy quickly reached the desired street and parked in the driveway of a vacant house. He took the gun in his hand and hid near the Hassel's residence. Around 10:30, Tyrone's truck pulled into the driveway. The man grabbed a bag of food and disappeared through the front door. Now or never, Tyrone's perpetrator mentally urged himself. He had already replayed the scene in his mind several times. Imagine himself confronting Kamiah's husband, shooting, hitting the heart on the first attempt, and unconspicuously leaving the scene. But it all turned out to be not so easy and simple. As soon as Tyrone exited the house and headed towards the car to celebrate New Year's Eve with his parents and friends, Jeremy leaped out of the ambush and shot Tyrone at point blank range. The bullet reached its target and Tyrone fell to the ground. This emboldened the criminal. He approached closer and fired a few more rounds just to make sure his rival wasn't breathing. Then Jeremy swiftly ran towards the vacant house with his car was waiting. He didn't remember how he got behind the wheel, slamming on the gas pedal. He sped away from the horrific place as soon as possible. He raced down the highway at a wild speed all the way to Chicago, tossing the weapon out the window. Along the way, while it was Kamiah's turn to play her role as terrified wife, screaming, she ran onto the street, portraying a shocked and crazed spouse. She hysterically cried for help, hoping to attract the attention of neighbors who passed by. She ran back into the house to call 911. While the operator was asking for the address and additional information, she seemingly accidentally hung up, realized that despite the severity of the wound, Tyrone was still alive. She then dialed her father-in-law's number and asked him to return home immediately as his son had just been attacked and wounded. I gotta say, she hung up that phone because she tried to make sure this man dies. Meanwhile, the dispatcher managed to determine the location of the incident by the number and dispatched an ambulance there. The police arrived at the Hassel's house right after the paramedics. At this time, Kamiah continued to play the role of concerned wife, and it looked quite believable. When Tyrone was being loaded into the vehicle, the woman tried with all her might to get to him. The police had literally physically dragged her away. Unfortunately, Tyrone did not survive. He died from his injuries. When his family was informed of his news, Kamiah didn't miss a second of her performance as a grief-stricken widow. But as soon as she was alone with her phone, she immediately dialed Jeremy's number to confirm that he had finally done it. After receiving confirmation that the goal had been achieved, Jeremy headed to Georgia to quickly gather his belongings. In his mind, he had already reunited with Kamiah, taking Tyrone's place, and was enjoying the happy moment that had worked so long to reach. Don't forget, there's more to the story. Meanwhile, the Hassel family and the police worked tirelessly to determine who has orchestrated this attack on Tyrone. Detectives spoke with countless neighbors and Kamiah, who all insisted that they hadn't seen anything at all. The widow repeatedly told the police that she had no idea who could have targeted her husband. Investigators examined the crime scene in search of any clues that may have been left by the perpetrator. The only thing they found was a muddy footprint on the driveway, and it had rained earlier that day. Another lead emerged: an elderly couple living next door to the Hassels had seen a strange car. The vehicle had backed into the driveway of a vacant house. The building was for sale, and it was unlikely that any potential buyers had to come to view the residence at such a time of an hour and a half before New Year. That seemed suspicious to them, which the retirees reported to the police, who questioned them. They also saw an unknown man into this car shortly after the shots were fired, and the muddy footprints led to that direction. The initial theory was unsuccessful robbery, but nothing had been taken for Tyrone. His keys were on the ground, his wallet in his pocket, as with his phone. So this theory had quickly ruled out. When he started bombarding her with messages, ruled out. Now, intentional homicide most likely indicated some personal motive. But here too, the detectives were met with disappointment. Tyrone was one of those people who had no enemy. He was a good guy. Those around him thought highly of him. So the case hit a dead end almost immediately. Dead end. During the investigation, Kamiah began to completely ignore Jerry. When he started bombarding her with messages, she merely told him that she felt bad and missed her husband, Jerry. Now this was confusing. And then the woman decided to delete the messaging app altogether. She still remained in Tyrone's father's house along with his entire family, playing the role of the grieving wife. Kamiah turned 22 the day after receiving the autopsy. Instead of celebrating, she held a candlelight vigil in honor of her late husband. She constantly posted tearful posts on social media about how much she missed her spouse. She shared photos and memories and expressed sadness that her son had been deprived of a father. I'm gonna say this. I'm quite sure the reason why she's going through the motion right now, feeling bad at killing her husband, because she thought that killing him and being with this guy would set her soul on fire and make it complete, but it didn't. Chunk's second birthday was approaching, and now Tyrone was not there to celebrate this event with his family. The military's vacation was in, and everyone had to return to base. Everyone except Kamiah, who had been granted additional days by management due to the tragedy. The woman still staying with Tyrone's father. Her mother and father came to support her in this difficult time. They all believed that Kamiah was having a very hard time coping with the loss and couldn't come to terms with it. Tyrone's father was overly protective of her, wanting her and his grandson to be close by so he could keep an eye on them just in case. Who knows? Maybe the perpetrator had decided to wipe out the entire Hassel family. Meanwhile, Jeremy was beside himself. He had already taken a desperate step just for the sake of his beloved, and he had completely lost contact with her, not knowing how to turn for advice. He told his friend in detail about what he had done. about how he followed Tyrone, but simply couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. And then on New Year's Eve, he finally mustered the courage to do it. And now he himself didn't know how to live on. The friend, not knowing what to do in such a situation, went to the chapel to talk to the priest, to talk to the chaplain. He confessed that he was at a loss as what to do, to which the chaplain urged him to do the right thing and go to the police. When the friend eventually did a few days later, on January 19th, 2019, the detectives received another tip, this time from a young woman, Jeremy's ex-girlfriend. She believed that Kamiah and Jeremy were behind what had happened to Tyrone. So let's talk about when friends tell you this type of stuff. Do you confess or not? This, if it's something huge like murder, yeah, don't keep that to yourself. They just going to figure that out. Because that is, all right, let's see what we got here. Sorry about that yawn. Getting a little tiring over here. When investigators got to the military base in Georgia, they personally spoke not only with Jeremy, an ex-girlfriend, but also with other soldiers who confirmed the overly close and inappropriate relationship between the two lovers. Detectives obtained a warrant to search Jeremy's apartment in Georgia, as well as his mother's home in Chicago. They didn't find any weapons, but they did find documents for the purchase of 2 pistols, one of which matched the caliber that had been taken Tyrone's life. Requesting Kamiah yielded results. The widow quickly realized that what was happening, so she significantly downplayed her relationship with Jeremy. She said there was no close relationship between them, only a light flirtation, Lord. To back up her words, the widow even agreed to have a polygraph test, but she failed miserably. But remember, polygraphs is not, test results are not admissible in court. When Kamiah told that her lover had been arrested and that he had already begun testifying against her, the woman became frightened and started telling what had really happened. At the same time, she portrayed Jeremy as a stalker, obsessed with the idea of getting her for himself. This is already a prime example of what I told y'all, sociopathic behavior. Again, I'm not a trained therapist, but this is what I've noticed. She does not like to take responsibility. She likes to blame someone else. So she just said, hey, yeah, I was behind it. I did it. I knew about it. I did it, but I was scared for myself. Scared for my life. To back up her words, the widow even agreed to take a polygraph test but failed miserably. Okay. Excuse me. Let me go back. So he had come to Michigan on his own volition, following her and her husband everywhere. But eventually, already around 3 in the morning, she gave up and admitted that she and Jeremy had jointly planned the attack on the husband. So let's talk about why cops do this. Cops like keeping you in an interrogation room and breaking you down till you get tired, because if you're guilty, they know that you want to do anything to get back from out of their face. But hey, they got to do what they got to do, and they definitely doing it. And when she admitted that she and Jeremy had jointly planned the attack on her husband, Kamiah was detained and charged. Detectives lied that Jeremy had been arrested, and they can legally do this. This is basically like a bait and switch. They can bait you into thinking that something is really happening when it's not. They only came for him a few days later. Unlike his mistress, he refused to speak without a lawyer present. And when the Hassel family learned who was responsible for Tyrone's death, they were in shock. Most disgusting to them was the fact that Kemia had played the role of a grieving wife so well and had stayed in their home until the very end. They had taken care of her in every way and tried to support her at a time when they were themselves in genuinely mourning. It took authorities 7 months to build a case against Kamiah Hassel, as all the communications between her and Jeremy was conducted on Snapchat, and the woman had deleted the app from the phone. Now, the detectives were unable to recover these records. However, They did have the woman's search history betraying her own husband. Kamiah had Googled whether police could retrieve Snapchat messages after deleting an account, and Kamiah, this was possible within a 30-day period. So the widow deliberately stopped communicating with Jeremy through the app. So let's talk about Snapchat. It is true. Snapchat messages are really hard to retrieve because the way the company sets it up and deletes it off the server as soon as you delete it. But there are other alternatives out there. Believe that. So, in addition, prosecutors had no physical evidence linking Kamiah to her husband's death. Fortunately for the prosecution, she made a fatal mistake by admitting that she had done during a phone call from jail with her mother. Kamiah said that she and Jeremy had planned the crime together, but most of the responsibility lay with him, as he was the one who had forced her to do it. When her mother asked why she didn't just broken up with her husband, Kamiah started that she was afraid of disappointing her with her failed marriage. But her mother responded that she was more disappointed by what she had done. After speaking with her daughter, the woman expressed strong remorse to Tyrone's family. Because they had lost their son because of Kamiah, and Jeremy was tried separately. The widow's lawyer insisted that the detectives had forced their client to make a concession by deceiving her that Jeremy had testified. Moreover, the interrogation lasted well past midnight when Kemia was so tired she said too much against herself. Then they questioned the reliability of the polygraph test, stating that these tests are unreliable and can give false results. However, the phone call made by Kamiah to her mother destroyed the entire line of defense. The jury deliberated for a very short time before reaching a verdict, finding Kamiah guilty of conspiracy to commit a crime as well as intentional infliction of grievous bodily harm in the first one. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The defendant showed no remorse when her sentence was announced. Jeremy, unlike his mistress, repented and fully admitted his guilt. Tyrone's loved ones spoke in court. Jeremy also admitted that he was in love and was ready to do anything for Kamiah and her son that she asked him to do. Jeremy was sentenced to 65 to 90 years in prison with the possibility of parole. As he was being led out of the courtroom, he shouted to Tyrone's father that he wanted to tell him something. The man who had lost his son because of Jeremy, visited him in prison once to listen. During an hour-long conversation, Jeremy told Tyrone's father the honest truth about everything. From the moment he met Kamiah to the tragic end, he felt that the family deserved to know the real truth because their daughter-in-law probably hadn't told them. Kamiah and Jeremy were dishonorably discharged from the armed forces after their convictions, and in 2021, Kamiah tried to appeal her verdict, claiming that her lawyer was incompetent and that she was a victim of battered woman syndrome. But the court rejected her appeal. Tyrone and Kamiah's son Chunk went to live with Kamiah's mom. He communicates with his grandparents on his father's side, mostly by video. But after the tragedy, the relationship between the two families became very awkward. And the saddest thing is that Chunk would never see his father again. Rest in peace to Army Sergeant Tyrone Hassel III. Guys, this is so sad. This story really saddened me when I first heard it because this young man didn't deserve this. He really did. He was an exceptional young man. I mean, he was trying to do everything he could to do the right thing for his family. And he thought the woman he was with was about that family life. She wasn't. And it's sad to say that he had to lose his life in the most despicable way. Guys, listen. If you're in a relationship with anybody, women, please listen to this too. If it gets to the point they want you to harm someone or murder someone, walk away. Please walk away. It ain't worth it. Because at the end of the day, you have to deal with this, man. Anyway, this is a sad story. Again, please tell me your thoughts about this story. I hope and pray that you guys also answer my comments. If y'all please answer the comments. If you take the time to listen to my podcast, please drop a comment and rate me. I preferably prefer 5-star, but please rate me. Give me feedback. I need to know. It helps out with the algorithm. And also, too, check out my Patreon, www.patreon.com/you can't make this BS up. Join it. I'm building it up every day with some of the coolest things to do. All right. I'm out.